Hello everybody, it's Max with Crypto Talk Now. Yesterday the US Senate Committee addressed crypto regulation. And of course this is perfect timing in correlation to what happened recently with the arrest of Sam Bankman-Fried. But if anything, one of my key takeaways that I noticed was one specific individual who brought up payments. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's XRP coverage. I'm going to go ahead and full screen this. So credit to this particular individual, Sabrina Eaton of Cleveland.com, with this particular article. Now it states specifically, the U.S. Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, chaired by Ohio's Sherrod Brown, on Wednesday weighed whether the high-profile failure of the FTX cryptocurrency exchange and the arrest of its former chief executive, aka Sam Bankman-Fried, amounted to fraud by a rogue company, or was enough evidence basically to support this notion that crypto is basically just that, a Ponzi scheme. Now look at this specifically. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to scroll down. So, you know, it's crazy to hear these type of people mention this, but it states, for instance, this particular lady. So she states basically that the whole industry itself is basically an asset class built out of nothing. She said, it trades entirely based on people's belief that it can be worth something, but the technology has not worked for payments.
What? Concern is that, that fraud is definitely being perpetuated, but that the whole industry itself is basically an asset class built out of nothing. It trades entirely based on people's belief that it can be worth something. But as he said, the technology has not worked for a payments mechanism. It's become a speculative instrument. But ultimately, as Mr. McKenzie said, it's a zero-sum game. And if people stop believing in it, then it all falls apart.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it myself. It has not worked for a payments mechanism? Are you kidding me? It says it's become speculative instrument, or it's become a speculative instrument. And if anything, my key takeaway from this was basically, you have got to be kidding me. This is a person that's clearly never been educated on blockchain technology, and if anything, they're not aware of what is basically coming up here with the flip of the switch, if you will, or what the likes of Ripple, XRP, XLM, and so on bring to the table, right? But earlier this year, we have, for instance, the likes of Congress, who invited various different people from crypto who were more educated, if you will, about the crypto use cases. It's just like they basically forgot everything. That, or maybe this person didn't get the memo, or simply just didn't show up or cared to listen or pay attention when Congress invited these people from various different crypto projects and so on. So if anything, I wanted to basically mention that, and I also want to show you guys this right here. And if anything, it gives you a broader perspective, to say the least, about just that, the payments and what that entails and so on. And sometimes people just simply don't understand the concept of Ripple's payments, specifically with what they got going on with XRP and so on. So we're going to take a brief moment to show you guys this particular video clip, and of course we'll come back here in just a moment. So here we go.
The financial industry needs to come on board. There is no other way for blockchain and these business models to go mainstream without the financial industry. We are seeing enormous amounts of demand from our financial institutions, traditional players who say, how do I get in there and provide solutions that my consumers are asking for?
Crypto means business. Together with regulatory clarity, we'll make sure that transparency and trust are the bedrock of what crypto is built on.
I'm a big proponent that we should be regulating activity, but not technology. We end up all tied up in thinking about crypto. We ignore some of the real benefits that can bring on a B2B level through moving value around the world.
Most of us here are all trailblazers to these technologies. We came onto the Ripple net first and then found a case with the ODL and then moved to the next level.
It's absolutely huge. We can scale up, scale down. We know when our peaks are and we can give the Ripple team a heads up. It's just an incredible, liberating process. We want to grow. There's no roadblocks to that.
A lot of banks are saying we are tech companies giving financial solutions. It's not the fiat world and the crypto world. It's all embedded.
One of the things that we find very important about blockchain, and specifically XRP, is this ability to have individuation for these carbon credits as they come through. That's super important to developing the carbon market.
I truly think that CBDCs will be an enabler of innovation. There's literally endless potential use cases.
Your courage to build with us is helping create a game-changing infrastructure that really better the world.
All right, so it's fair enough to say that it's too bad that that particular lady who addressed the U.S. Senate committee couldn't have had at least a little bit more of a background to understand the use cases of, for instance, Ripple's on-demand liquidity, the cross-border payments. Come on, specifically cross-border payments, right? For her to make those particular statements, it shows how oblivious people like herself are when it comes to the real use cases for crypto, and especially when it comes to blockchain technology, so on and so forth. Now, of course, here at CTM, we love to basically provide you guys more extended information when it comes to amicus briefs and so on. So I saw this, and it states almost half the amicus in Ripple versus SEC, and of course Ripple themselves, stated that the SEC does not have the authority from Congress to regulate crypto assets. What if Judge Torres agrees? Would the SEC and Ripple settle rather than have no SEC win and no XRP clarity? Well, let's zoom in regards to this. So it says the parties amicus basically and requested amicus have thoroughly addressed the case law, or rather the dearth of it, in their respective briefings. They basically, or well put I should say, neither Congress nor the SEC have articulated any meaningful statute, regulation, or rule regarding the nascent cryptocurrency industry. There's a little bit more. So second, a decision for the SEC could bless an impermissible extension of the Commission's jurisdiction beyond that provided by Congress, resulting in significant burdens of market participants. The existing framework for securities regulation is simply not designed to, for instance, that was particularly the one that was cut off, but again, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Look at this. It says this right here. So it says, however, Very Dow agrees with the amicus curiae brief of Philip Goldstein and ICANN in that matter. Neither the courts nor regulatory bodies should expand agency control over an issue of deep economic and political significance. In a nutshell, major questions. And it shouldn't be deferred, of course, to just that, Congress. I know the last one that earlier got cut off, but this last one, right? So it says a subtle distinction of monumental importance lurks beneath the surface of this case and threatens to displace Congress's role in deciding how crypto assets will be just that, regulated. Now I'm gonna come back into the frame for just a moment, but that's the whole thing. A lot of this isn't necessarily being said when you saw these particular interviews. And when you did hear, for instance, from the likes of Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank and so on, not once does he ever mention, especially when it came to addressing Congress, or was it the CNBC interview, or was it MSNBC, one or the other, CNBC I should say, where he has any remorse or says, you know, for instance, from a PR standpoint, hey, this is what we're going to do. You know, I'm going to do everything I can in my power to make sure, you know, investors get, you know, their money back and so on. None of that. It's more like, well, this is how much I lost. You know, this is how it's affecting me and all the taxes he's paying and so on. That is not exactly the best PR move, to say the least. So I'm going to show you guys another particular clip, and of course, shout out to Crypto Lulu for always providing this. What about, for instance, what ISO20022 brings to the table in light of everything that's happened here recently? It's going to give you a different perspective on that messaging bus, to say the least, for ISO20022. We're going to go ahead and play it. We're going to come back here in just a moment, and if anything, we're going to reflect on some commentary. So here we go.
I was wrong. I was completely wrong. The messaging bus is only the beginning of the information of the ISO message information retrieval process. There is more. The messaging bus is simply the vessel for the information, not the creator of the information itself. What I had failed to explore was the journey the information has to take before it even gets to the messaging bus, which all takes place in the token database. And not only did I discover that I was just scratching the surface of all of this ISO stuff, but I also realized there's a whole other ISO standard, multiple ISO standards that I'd never paid attention to. And here's the first one, ISO20022. This, I believe, is the digital token identifier. And that standard is the structure and the logic behind the codes given to countries, currencies, and assets, specifically looking at the financial world. And again, if you want someone who's in tech to deliver this message, please go over and see T's Crypto Spot. He's talked about this at long length. So if there's an entity that is deciding how these codes work and how the codes are distributed, the format that all of that structure is created under, this could be very revealing as to which tokens in the cryptocurrency space are actually going to be used for payments and which ones, simply by the 3 letters that they were given upon their inception, would actually not make the cut. Assets that are used for cross-border payments or have cross-border utility must have an X in the first slot of the 3 letters. Of course, XRP, XLM, and XDC are all in the clear at this point because there's no other codes that match those ones. But there is one asset that's going to have a real hard time, especially if they're going to be used for doing payments across the world. And that example is Ethereum. ETH is already being used by Ethiopia as their country code under ISO20022. That's crazy, right? Ethereum literally technically cannot be used in this manner, and it can't be registered in the digital token identifier as ETH. Now, whether they can actually change their code to be something else that's not registered, I actually don't know that system, so maybe that's a possibility. XRP, XLM, and XDC have no interferences with any other code. They also already start with an X for cross-border, and as a result, they will fit perfectly into that digital token identifier process, and there'll be seamless retrieval of those tokens to deliver through the internet into the messaging bus and then onto the recipient banks via the ISO20022 message. If we're moving into a blockchain environment and we know that digital assets are going to play a role in the ISO20022 messaging standard, and we know that the ISO20022 messaging standard interacts with the messaging bus, which gets its information from the token database where the digital token identifier resides, understanding that all the codes within the digital token identifier have to conform in those 3-letter codes of cryptocurrencies being added to these asset lists and country lists that already exist, we have to understand that the token database has to have a regulation, it has to have a system by which these digital assets are given their codes and it doesn't conflict with any others, so that those codes can come from the digital token identifier, from the token database, so it can then move through the internet, attach itself there to the messaging bus, and the ISO20022 message has now all of this rich data, this increased amount of data in that message, to then go on to bank B. What you realize really quickly is that these 3-digit asset codes cannot conflict with any other code in any other ISO standard. So whether it's a standard code in ISO 42117 or 42165 or 3166, they cannot overlap. No 2 codes can match.
And we're back. So basically, I really loved how, Lulu basically outlines that as usual. It gives you more of a broader perspective of, for instance, how the messaging bus works and so on. I'll say this much: I'm going to agree with him on this. And yeah, it's just a possibility, but it seems like it's going to be a big problem, to say the least, when it comes to Ethereum. So, for instance, with the ISO20022 standard, you have basically, like you mentioned, these abbreviations, and I love how the likes of XRP, think about the X, the cross borders payment. So the way I'm personally going to look at it is like somebody asked me, well, what does the XRP stand for? All right, cross border as in the X, and then RP as in Ripple, XLM, right, cross border once again, and then lumens, right? And then how about this for XDC, whether this is official or not, the X, right, cross border, and then DC as in what? Digital currency. So the whole concept with the triple X's, I think they thought this out well ahead, many years before everybody else basically thought about it and so on. But that problem with ETH, like he mentions with Ethiopia, that would be a problem. How do you basically do you make changes, to say the least? I don't know. Maybe it's a minor problem, but I love how he basically addressed it and broke it down, as he always does. Shout out to Crypto Lulu. Shout out to, for instance, the 3T Warriors Academy. Over 100,000 subscribers. One of the best crypto networks out there as far as I'm concerned. And they're covering real tokens with real coins, real utilities, and specifically the ISOs. Crypto Lulu is basically one of my go-to guys when it comes to this. Let's face it, we always feature him here. We highlight a lot of his footage and so on, and rightfully so. By all means, give him a follow, whether it's on 3T Warriors Academy or is on his own through Twitter and so on. And then last but not least, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think in regards to all of this? Do you think that they basically need to re-invite some of these people from that they invited earlier on in the year, who basically educated them on the likes of crypto use cases, blockchain technology, and so on? Or do you feel as though it's just going to fall on deaf ears because, let's face it, it's politics. They have their own agendas. My thing is this: I just wish that some people would put our best interest at heart instead of their own party's best interest at heart. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for staying to the end. If you enjoy a live show, check us out every single day, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. On behalf of myself, Larry, and the rest of the Crypto Talk Now Network team, may y'all have a blessed day, and we'll see you on the next one.
I'm loading up on XRP because there was this guy, right? It was Marvin Gaye, they called him. And he was saying all these things about XRP and everybody's getting it and it's going to do this. And so I started buying a little bit of XRP, frankly. I think I like XRP. People talk about it. Apparently there's these bears and these riddlers that talk about XRP. I really don't know anything about it. But, Eric, Trump, and they all like children, Ivanka, they like this XRP. So we're probably going to buy some.